Amen. Kent Vincent, resourcing strategist, kind of specialist. Give us some new year resourcing strategies, my friend.
Yeah, well, can you see okay, hear okay?
Yeah,
Is
we
everything
got you.
like it should be? Excellent. Well, thank you guys for joining this morning. In fact, I see several of you that are just friends and guys I know well, girls I know well. So thank you for being here. My name is Kent Vincent, live out of Nashville, and work with churches just like Brian, seems like every day right now, especially around resourcing. So before we jump into options, I want to start by kind of creating the argument, if you will. So in a recent study, we surveyed about 500 of the largest churches in the country. They range from about 1,000 in worship to over 20,000 in worship. And when we asked them about their biggest financial obstacles, they responded pretty clearly in three distinct areas. And so those top three responses were aging donor base. Let's see here. Church debt, and the overall lack of a generosity strategy. And so some of you may go, yep, that would be us. That would be my church. This is not I don't think any of these are unique. So when you look at them, that's why over 500 churches said, this is it. And so I want to start, before I give you the options for resourcing, I want to start by making the argument, like, well, what has to be in place to start addressing these three things and more? And so I want to start by using a restaurant. So if a restaurant were to open in your area and you were to go visit that restaurant for the first time, there would be some things that you would want to see or experience before you'd be ready to give your endorsement or go there again. And I actually did a little research on this and found out this is actually what people look for. So in a dining room is where you first experience a restaurant. You're looking for guest experience. Like, are people welcoming? Was the signage good? Parking good? When you come in, did it feel like home? Did it feel right? Or did it feel like you were intruding on their space? Responsive service. If you're going to go back to that restaurant, how's the service, man? Did you sit there forever? Were people engaging with you? Menu design. I follow Babylon Bee on Instagram. Babylon Bee did a little deal the other day where they talked about Cheesecake Factory was kind of retooling their menu and bringing it down to 38 pages, just 38 pages. But menu design matters. Can you find what you're looking for, or does it feel like you're kind of culling through a book, a workbook to get there? Quality food. You're looking for quality food, reasonable cost, and then this will be the deal breaker, I think, for all of us: hygiene and cleanliness. Right? If you go to a new restaurant, it's not clean, your server has bad hygiene, probably not going back. Now, I'm going to equate this to the church, but I just want you to see that dining room, because just like your church, when you experience a restaurant, that's what you experience. But the restaurant dining room is always driven by the kitchen. The kitchen drives the restaurant dining room. And so if these things are healthy in the kitchen, you're going to have all these things in the dining room. So staff, is the staff qualified? Does it have good management, good chef, good servers? The responsive service is a direct tied to expertise. Is there expertise? Are these people well trained? Do they feel like they know what they're doing? Do they feel like they're making up as they go? Creative. Sometimes creative doesn't mean every time you go in the menu's different. It just means that it's thought through and creatively laid out so you can find what you need. Quality food is directly tied to nutrition. Are they just throwing stuff out there, or is nutrition clear in the food quality? If you're going to go to a restaurant, cost and consistency is probably going to be the two things. If it's clean, cost and consistency, so is restaurant consistent in the kitchen? And ultimately, is it clean? If the kitchen's dirty, restaurant's going to be dirty. Now, again, illustration of a restaurant, but I'm about to flip it and help you with the same illustration in your church when it comes to resourcing. So from a restaurant perspective, those are the things you're looking for. Those are the things we kind of monitor. Now, take that to the church. Your folks come into the quote unquote proverbial dining room, and they're looking, if they're gonna give generously, either toward a tithe or even above and beyond a tithe, they're gonna look for vision and purpose. Like, do you know where you're going? And not do you just tell them, like, do they experience clarity in the dining room? Is there good trust in leadership? Do they trust you? And most of you on the call, you're either pastors or staff members at local churches. And so you can judge this pretty quickly. I ask pastors all the time, and they kind of think that's funny when I ask them in a discovery call, does your church like you? And they go, well, yeah, of course they do. If I asked them, would they say they liked you? Well, I don't know. Well, we might want to figure that out, because if you're trying to encourage resourcing and generosity, if they don't trust you in leadership, that's going to be a barrier. Organizational health. So organizational health has things to do with like margin. Does it feel like we're doing everything under the sun, or does it feel like everything we do is really strategized? Organizational health. Setting up the church as a storehouse. This is a big, big, big deal. We lead very sophisticated givers today. We don't lead like we did probably even 20 years ago, certainly 30 years ago, where people are just disciplined to give. Today, people are making judgment calls. And one of the things they're looking at is pop culture has driven generosity in such a way that people want to see result. So like they want to make sure that we're making impact in the community. And a lot of churches are set up where when you give to the church, it goes to do our thing, but it is not actually a storehouse that funnels through and is generous in the community. And so what your givers are doing is they're now starting to split the quote unquote tithe or anything generous above a tithe. They're splitting that between, if you're not the storehouse, between the church and the discipline of giving and their favorite nonprofit, because they potentially don't view your church potentially as the place where the money goes into the community or into the local mission field, or even nationally or worldwide. So setting up the church as a storehouse. And then finally, just setting up do you celebrate, a culture of celebration. Those are 5 key tenets to great generosity. So when your folks come and experience your church, is there vision and clarity and purpose? Is there trust and leadership? Organizational health? Is the church a storehouse? And is there a culture of celebration? Now, again, the dining room is always driven by the kitchen. And so when we look into the office, to the culture of the staff, is there clarity? Like if I went and poked around in your staff, would today they go, we know exactly what we exist for. We know where we're going. We know how we're going to get there. We have clarity. Relationships. And that's relationships internally with the staff. That's relationships, into the dining room, if you will, or with the congregation. Just good relationships. Are we healthy relationally? Margin. Is there margin, or does your church run red line all the time? Because that has how you run in margin of time, and that resource of time has a direct impact on your budgeting. So if you're running wide open, you're probably spending everything you bring in, and maybe even a little bit more. The dining room sees that, like they're watching. And in some cases, they're very proactive about asking about that. Hey, where are we? Right? Some of you post that. You have it in your church newsletter or whatnot. But one of the things I want you to see is good budgeting. Good budgeting creates margin. In the same way you disciple your folks to give with margin. Hey, we want you to, we're asking you to give biblically. We're asking you to give 10% to the church. Well, they're looking at you going, do you do the same thing as an organization? Do we tithe? Do we tithe to nonprofits? Do we create margin for reserves or a storehouse or do we store money when God moves? Like, how do we do it budgeting? And then finally, movement. Here's the bottom line. People like to be a part of successful things. Is there movement in our church? Or is it my boys play chess? Is it like a chessboard where there's movement, but it all stays on the pallet, it all stays on the table? Like, are we different in movement this year than we were last year? Now I'm going to pause there for a second, and I'm going to give you this statement because you're in January right now. All of us have different fiscal years. So some of those run calendar, some of those run, maybe September to October, October to September, something like that. But your church thinks calendar. And in January, you're going to give your giving reports, but are you celebrating God's movement in our church in 2022? Like, January is the time. So if that hadn't crossed your mind, now's the time. And I'm not talking about giving a spreadsheet graphic on the screens. I'm talking about How many people gave their heart to Christ? How many baptisms did we have? How many mission trips have we had? Like, share movement, celebrate movement. Now's the time to do that. Now's the time to do that. Now I'm going to pause, and I want you to do a quick tally in your mind, and maybe you write it down. If you think 1 to 5, 5 being pronounced, 1 being anemic, how are we doing? How is our church viewing us in vision and purpose? 1 to 5. 5 is, man, we're crystal clear and they get it. 1 is, I don't know that I've ever shared anything. How are we doing in trust and leadership? How are we doing in organizational health? How are we doing in church as a storehouse? And then how are we doing in our culture of celebration? Now, if you scored, you just take those and average it out, divide by 5, and you'll get a tally. That'll start to share or show you kind of a quick scorecard of, hey, before we step into resourcing, we may need to get some of these other things lined up.
Hey,
So,
Ken, can I
yeah.
ask a quick question here?
Sure.
If a leader is sitting here and kind of engaging with this content and saying, yeah, I'm here, and they feel like they need to get better in every area, I think that could be a little overwhelming.
Mhm.
Where would you say start? If you said, hey, listen, yeah, you can't do all these things at once, start here. What would you recommend?
Yeah, and that's going to shift a little bit by context, but at the very first thing I'd say is get clarity. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And if you don't know where you're going, it's really hard for people to get behind it financially. The return on investment feels almost like you're throwing into a black hole. So clarity is where I would start, and then I would kind of process through it. I'm going to share about 6 points as we close today. Like, this would be the sequence that I would hit. And so some of you, if you have clarity, then start at step 2. If you have that, go to 3. And so I'll share a little bit with that. That's a great question, though.
Perfect. Thanks, Kent.
You bet. Now, the big idea here is that generosity flows on the back of 3 key things: clear vision, relational equity, and an accessible opportunity. So when you engage your folks, they're going to want to know, hey, is there clarity of what I'm giving to, and does it matter? And then relationally, do I trust leadership that they'll not only do that, but that we will leverage the money and maximize the money toward that thing? And then what is the opportunity? Like, what is it? How do I give? What's that process look like? So generosity always flows on the back of those 3 things. Now, I'm about to share with you 2 primary options that we have in the church, but everything to this point is kind of setting up, and if you will, if we're tilling the ground. And so the 2 options primarily for resourcing in the church are capital campaigns and generosity cultures. They're not the only things, but they're the 2 primary things. And so I want to differentiate those 2 and tell you kind of how to use them, how to leverage them, and when to do that. I'll start with capital campaigns. And just quick bullets: a capital campaign is a quick influx of money in a short period of time. You want to use a capital campaign when there's a project to accomplish. So you have some clarity, you know what you're trying to do as a church, bigger than bricks and sticks, but there is a bricks and sticks potential project on the horizon, and we need to pay for that. They typically run 24 to 36 months in duration. And what that means is people go to commitment day, they make a pledge, and then they have 24 or 36 months to give that pledge. If you only recently we started seeing those campaigns shortened to 24 months. Typically, traditionally, it's been 36 months. Here's a little framework for you. If you're sitting there going, Kent, we got a project, tell me what we can raise. Typically, a 36-month campaign, if you look at your operational budget, if you do 36 months, you're going to raise an additional, over and beyond your operating budget, an additional 1 to 1.5 times your budget. So if you have a $200,000 operating budget, you're going to raise potentially in a 36 months, you're going to raise somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 additional money. The advantage with a capital campaign is faster. I wouldn't say it's fast, but it's faster. The challenge is it's intense. Like, if you're going to do this well, you got to stay with it. It's intense. And then the pro tip is you want to start 8 to 10 months in advance. So 8 to 10 months in advance. Now, I've got a resource for you. One of our colleagues, Greg Gibbs, put just about like everything you need to run a campaign. He put it in a book. You can buy it off of Amazon. It's called the Capital Campaign Playbook. Greg wrote it. It's a handy dandy. It is a playbook. Now, I'll tell you that you can do this on your own. Most churches raise double the money if they bring in a consultant or a coach to help them. There's advantage. Most of you on the call today, this is not the world you live in. And that's fine. It's your preachers or disciple, small group leaders or disciple makers. We have paid the stupid tax, so you don't have to. And so that's what we bring to the table. Couple of key things here. So capital campaigns, if you've done one, you either you may have gone through it and felt icky at the end. Capital campaigns don't have to feel icky, but the timeline, which is where that 8 to 10 months, the timeline matters. Short runways create transactions. Long runways allow for discipleship. Now, we all want generosity initiatives to be discipleship. You are disciple makers. So we want any resourcing initiative to be a discipleship. Now, frankly, some of you need to simply call me, like you need to text me or call me today. And I'm actually going to give you my cell phone at the end. Brian laughed about it. I'm going to give you my cell phone. Because the deal is, and next week I'm home. So next week's my blocked off home week. I'm going to set up, if you want to talk, I want to talk to you about it. Even if you let me help you strategize in 30 minutes, call me. Don't feel like you're on an island. Okay. Right now, you should be, if you're going to do a fall 23 campaign, you should be working on it right now. Once you get to April or Easter, you should be looking at at winter 24. So if you get to May and you go, hey, fall, we're going to do a campaign, that's not going to be enough runway for you to do discipleship. It's going to be transaction and icky. So
can I ask a quick question regarding that?
Sure.
I would venture to guess if I'm not a senior pastor sitting in on this right now, I'm going to have to lead up from some second or third chair. And my senior pastor may not be wired to think that far ahead or may not understand. Can you give me just one practical or two practical things to do to help awaken in a gentle way our senior leadership to the fact that we need to start thinking about this now if it's on the horizon for the fall or for the winter?
Yeah, just in-house, the thing I would start vision casting is there are some key components to a good capital campaign, one being information. Most of us are we've experienced the inspiration piece, which is the 5 or 6 week preaching series, which is where your pastor lives. Like, what do I have to preach on? That's going to be in the fall. But the information, like if we don't have conversations about what we're doing, why we're doing it now, how much it's going to cost, what are we asking them to do? If we don't do those in right now for a fall campaign, like we're not having those conversations right now, it only allows for transaction at the end. So lean into your pastor around, pastor, you love these people and you want to disciple them. We need to tell them ahead of time before you go preach and they start connecting with God about what it is. Let's tell them ahead of time what we're doing. And which means we got to start thinking about that now.
I love that. Just play into that shepherding kind of heart that the pastor has. Yeah. Love it. Great. Thanks, Kent.
Yep. All right. So capital campaign. Now, all generosity initiatives become discipleship when we posture them in what we want for our folks over what we want from them. That includes a capital campaign. Typically, capital campaigns have a project carrot, if you will, hanging out there, and it feels like we're just wanting something from them. Brian, to your point, the timeline allows us to flip the switch to what we want from them by actually dialoguing and discipling. So big idea, generosity becomes discipleship when postured in what we want for them over what we want from them. Now, the other option is a generosity culture where discipleship is actually cultivated and discipled into our culture. And so here's some handles for that. So discipling generosity through a generosity culture is an evergreen approach to generosity. It disciples generosity into the culture in the same way that you You have systems in place to disciple how to read your Bible or how to connect with other believers in small group. When we install a generosity culture in a church, we see an immediate 10 to 30% increase in just ongoing resources. Now, a generosity culture is typically not designed to pay for a project. This is when you don't have a project, but you have an aging donor base or church debt, or you don't have a generosity strategy. This is your ticket. Now, most churches have that immediately 10 to 30% bump, and then they level out, and this is evergreen, this is year over year increase, somewhere between 15 and 20%, which is significant. I've got a big church I worked with that was basically funding their operations and their vision expansion through capital campaigns. That can, like, you could hit giving fatigue pretty quick there. We flipped the switch and we got to generosity culture, installed that. 5 years out, they're right at 22% increase because it's built into the rhythm. They're seeing more people at the tithe level and above than they ever have in the history of the church. And it's funding everything that they want to do as far as vision accomplishment. So that could be for you. The advantage is it's meaningful. The challenge is it's slower. And then the pro tip, it just takes time for things to become culture. So it's not a silver bullet. So we have a book for that. Greg wrote a book called Creating a Culture of Generosity. It's a field guide for church leaders. You get off Amazon. Again, all the handles for how to do this. Most of when I work with a church, and most of you on the call, I would just encourage you, at least talk to us. Let us help you. But if you were competent in this, you'd be doing this. So let us help you figure this thing out. Now, a couple of handles. Generosity culture, and when you think about cultivating generosity in your church, most churches, the staff, they all look at the pastor and go, that's his job. And that's a fallacy. It's all of our job. We're all discipleship pastors. We disciple how to read your Bible. We all are discipleship pastors on small group. We're all discipleship pastors when it comes to generosity culture. So you want to lean in as a whole staff, and that just takes some work. Okay. So it's a new competency. Talk to us. Give me a shout. We'll talk about it. So those are the two big options: capital campaign, generosity culture. And let me close with a couple ideas. In closing, there are two options with two books. Capital campaigns, we have a book, Capital Campaign Playbook, typically project-based, quick influx of dollars, timelines about 24 to 36 months. Or a generosity culture, which is evergreen discipleship, consistent 10 to 30% increase in giving. The book is Creating a Culture of Generosity. Now, here are the key, Brian, going back to your question earlier, here are the key principles, and I kind of put them in a sequence. You can figure out where you are, and if you have them all, you're ready to roll. If you're wondering where to start with clarifying your vision. Where am I headed? Next step, align the staff. Where are we headed? How are we doing in the kitchen? How's the staff doing? Next, learn to celebrate your wins. That would have an assumption that we have movement. Let's celebrate that. Next, start to cultivate your culture. Celebrate wins. Cheer them on. Tell the stories of their generosity. When their success, celebrate all of that. Okay. Communicate the opportunities. What's available to exercise our generosity muscle? How are those accessible? Communicate those opportunities. Disciple the congregation. At the end of the day, this is all about discipleship. And then finally, just call us. Call us. We're here to help you. Reach out. Again, I'm going to give you all my information at the end. I'm not going to bite you, and I'm not going to do a hard sell. Let me give just a quick little background on Oxano, because it's important. We're part of a larger organization of Lifeway. We are not commissioned. Pretty much everybody else in the generosity space is commissioned. They have to sell you something. We don't have to sell you anything. Lifeway makes it possible for us simply to help. Just reach out to us. There's not going to be a hard sell. We are here to help you. We are all churchmen, and we want to help the local church succeed. Just call us. Just call us.
I love that, Kent. And kind of flip back to that real quick, Kent. if you don't mind, those key principles there, so everybody can screenshot if they need to. And I love your heart there. Just kind of, hey, even by just providing books, like, hey, you can read the book, but probably you need that strategic outsider's point of view perspective. I got a question came to mind before we get into Q&A that's come through the chat. That celebrate your wins. How do you see churches celebrating wins or leaders celebrating wins without it feeling transactional or like it's all about the money? You see what I'm saying? Like, what's a good way? Because I feel like a lot of leaders miss the celebration, but we know what gets celebrated gets replicated. Can you give us a couple quick ideas on, hey, here's some ways I've seen churches celebrate wins when it comes to resourcing generosity that really helps promote that culture, that really advances without feeling like manipulative or transactional or, like a carny.
Like a carny. Well, the first big idea I would tell you is celebrate wins, all wins. They don't just have to be resourcing or generosity related. Like when something is happening in the body that's successful, celebrate it. So the first big idea is celebrate all wins.
Yeah.
Second is there are obvious things that we do in church, and I'm going to just pull a couple handles out. A lot of you will do summer camps. A lot of you do VBS. Some of you do things like Awana. You just came off of Christmas and you did a Christmas Eve service, and probably you may have done 20 Christmas Eve services. Like, there are things that happen in our church that you can celebrate and then immediately pivot and go, listen, and this is truth. Church, if not for your generosity, we don't do VBS. Church, if not for your generosity, we don't do camp. We can't provide 20 Christmas Eve services. Like, there are immediate pivots that you can look your church right in the face and there's a direct tie. Look, that win was powered by your generosity. That's authentic. It doesn't have to be 15 minutes. It just has to be a quick pivot to go, just thank you. And then here's a little functional thing I tell, because it's a competency. Like, I think celebration's a competency. Quite frankly, I've not been good at it historically. And so when you're learning a new competency, here's a really, really practical tip. Calendar it. Put 52 weeks on a Word doc. And then I tell churches or tell teams, create a 4-week rhythm and put it on a calendar and assign it to somebody. For instance, week 1 of every month, Brian is going to celebrate something at the welcome. Week 2, the pastor is going to celebrate something at the offering. Week 3, the worship pastor is going to celebrate something during worship. And you want to mix it up enough in the flow where it's planned spontaneity, where it feels spontaneous, but we know that we're not good at it. So we build a system to help us be good at it. And then you just run that 4-week liturgy monthly. It's sporadic enough and moved around enough in the service where the church doesn't get it. Like, one of the things I tell you, every time you do the offering, don't do a generosity moment. Like, you don't have to I have churches that every time that they're about to take the offering, they spend 5 minutes doing something, generosity related. Your church is checking out on that. That's one of those things. If I know it's coming, I just check out and check my email or something. And that's where it feels inauthentic. It feels like you're having to manufacture things week in and week out. Don't do that. And there are things in your 52-week list, where VBS is going to hit. Where Easter is going to hit. Where camp is going to hit. Where those mission trips are going to happen. Put them in your calendar, knowing that the next week that you're going to celebrate that and pivot and go, hey, church, thanks for your generosity. It's more than you asked for, but there you go.
Oh, so good. No, I mean, that is, if I'm a leader sitting there listening to this, I'm like, that is it. That right there is mind-blowing, because I know, and honestly, Kent, I've coached churches to, use that vision casting, use that offering as a vision casting moment, put pictures of the mission trip up there and kind of share a little bit every time. And I never really thought about the fact that, some people may just kind of get used to the rhythm and not even see it or hear it anymore. So mixing it up is a good thing. Man, you've helped me today, and I appreciate that. Um, I'm looking back, and this is a great time for folks to jump in here during the chat. There's a couple questions. First of all, Carrie, who's on the call, you worked like 20 plus years with Cheesecake Factory, so she is like totally in for that opening illustration.
Sorry about that.
She won't tell me why the menu's so big though. 72. Here's a question from Chad. Does your kind of generosity statistics on a capital campaign imply that a 72-month campaign could deliver the 3 times operational budget? Unpack that for a minute.
Okay. So very practically, nobody wants to be in a 72-month campaign. 36 months is your limit. So the first thing I'd coach is don't ever do a 72-month campaign. If you are and you're in it, there needs to be a break point, not a break point in like time where we stop giving for a month or 2 months, but there needs to be a pivot in messaging or something. Like 72 months is just an enormous amount of time. Everything in our world is getting shorter, not longer. So that's tough. So if you haven't launched, don't do 72 months. You can do 236 months back to back. Because there's closure to one and a start of another. And here, by the way, there's a stat on that. So the 1 to 1.5 times your budget is going to remain true pretty much through that whole 36 months, right? That first 36 months. You can do a secondary campaign and you'll probably experience about a 10% dip, a little giving fatigue there, unless you've grown. You can expect a pretty close end result if you do 2 back-to-back 36 months. If you try to do a third one in succession, it's going to drop dramatically. That's where giving fatigue is going to happen. So when you're strategizing, maximum of 2 back-to-back, and then you're going to have to create a break. Otherwise, your folks are going to go, man, that's just too much. It's just too much. And so to your point, 1 to 1.5 times your budget in the first 36, probably around that 1 to maybe 1.2%, right in that, almost a 1.2 times or something like that on your second one. And then when I say drop off, it's going to drop off probably 40 or 50% in your giving if you try to go past that.
Ken, I know we're planning another couple, key inflection points in the year to go, maybe even go a little bit deeper with capital campaigns in a Clarity First webinar, or even a generosity culture. And so I think we could probably get into some of those details. But I think if there's someone sitting out there right now that's kind of spinning up, I got so many different questions. I appreciate the fact that you've made yourself available for that and can really dig into the specifics of the context to do that. Hey, there's another question that came up coming back to that celebration and what you just illustrated. How do you talk about generosity? What's the difference between celebrating the wins during the offering and talking about generosity? So you kind of said spread that out, where the senior pastor talks about generosity, the worship pastor talks about generosity. Is it really saying the same thing, but just at a different time from a different voice? Like, hey, thanks for your support because we're able to do something. Like if I'm the worship pastor, how am I coaching my worship pastor to on their week to celebrate the win? What's a good way to kind of give them some words?
Yeah. So the coaching I would give you is, you don't have to, we don't have to talk about generosity / money every week.
Okay.
What we have to celebrate and tell stories of is movement. If that makes sense. Hey, like I'm a worship leader. I'm in a gap between songs. Church, I want to tell you a quick story about what happened this week that was so impactful in our church. Like, you're communicating movement. People give to successful things. And so you're telling successful things. Now, the flip side of that is, if you're not comfortable talking about generosity, we're not asking for money, then the temptation is you tell a bunch of wins and you never do bring it back to celebration around generosity. So you do have to you have to be cognizant. And a couple of handles there for you, Brian, as you just said, one of the key things about moving in the service is just to keep it where people don't know what's coming. And so you're getting to talk to the bulk of your congregation by moving it around. Secondly, it changes the voice. You expect the pastor to talk about all the time. If it's always the pastor and it's always at the offering moment, then what that is it can look a little manipulative. Hey,
Mm.
we're about to take the offering. Let me tell you what your money's going to. And that's the thing you're trying to break, is you're just trying to help us go, look, in the dining room, movement. As a church, gratefulness about how God is providing through you. And that could be evangelism, that could be meaningful service, that could be just in your dollars and cents. But God is moving among us in a holistic sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Kent, that's so good. And I think very practical for leaders that are in here. I'm going to come back to kind of close us out with this, what I hear a refrain that even in the generosity money talk we got to have with our church, there is this posture of, and this kind of why Oksana, why this is kind of our brand mark of clarity first. You know, that, hey, if we don't have clarity first, we probably won't have confidence outside of the senior pastor to talk about the wins or to point back to generosity. If we don't know kind of the why and the where that this generosity leads us, and that's not something that's kind of a heartbeat that the entire staff and even leadership team, you know, even our elder leaders, our deacon bodies, our small group leaders, if we don't all have that clarity first, then we do drift back towards that transactional, manipulative, we need your money in order to do this, versus, hey, look and see how your money is helping us fulfill this call. So that's why we go to clarity first. Clarity isn't everything, right? You know, but it affects everything and it changes everything. And so I hear that heartbeat. Help us come around the last turn to home, Kent. What else do you want to share? That's all the questions from the chat.
What I want to share is we are available. We're just available. Again, we're here to help you. Don't feel like you're going to get a hard sell. All of you are different. It's all contextual. It's what makes Oksana great, is we deal with your context. We help you be successful in your context. Call me. That is my cell phone number. You got my cell phone number. You can text me. I just got a text. You can text me. You can call me. You can email me, or you can just go to oksana.com, because it's not just Kent doing this. Brian does this. We've got a team that's here to help churches, help you be successful. And so reach out to us. Let's set up 30 minutes. If something comes of it and you need us to partner with you further, that's awesome. If nothing, if you get what you need and we can point you in the right direction, that's a win. The ultimate win for us is that you are successful in having vision clarity and achieving that vision. Let us help you do that.